Hello everyone, this is Dave from Fascinating Facts, and this is part 3 of our series on vampires. Today we look at the origins of one of the most famous vampires. We're talking about Dracula today, and we ask the question, was he a real vampire? What is a vampire? What do you imagine when you hear the word vampire living in the 21st century? One of the main characteristics of vampires is how they drink human blood. They typically drain their victims' blood using their sharp fangs, killing them, and in some cases turning them into vampires. In general, vampires hunt at night since sunlight weakens their powers or damages them. Some may have the ability to morph into a bat or a wolf. Vampires may have super strength and often have a hypnotic effect on their victims. In some cases, they can't see their image in a mirror, cross running water, and cast no shadows. The legend of vampires and Dracula. Vampire superstition thrived in the Middle Ages, especially as the plague decimated entire towns. The disease often left behind bleeding mouth lesions on its victims, which to the uneducated was a sure sign of vampirism. It wasn't uncommon for anyone with an unfamiliar physical or emotional illness to be labeled a vampire. Many researchers have pointed to porphyria, a blood disorder that can cause severe blisters on skin that's exposed to sunlight, as a disease that may have been linked to the vampire legend. Some symptoms of porphyria can be temporarily relieved by ingesting blood. Other diseases blamed for promoting the vampire myth include rabies and tuberculosis. In terms of drinking blood, clinical vampirism, more commonly known as Renfield syndrome, is an obsession with drinking blood, and over 50,000 people addicted to drinking blood have appeared in psychiatric literature from 1892 to 2010. This was documented in the work of Austrian forensic psychiatrist Richard von Krafft-Ebing. Many medical publications concerning clinical vampirism can be found in the literature of forensic psychiatry and forensic psychology, with the behavior being reported as an aspect of extraordinary violent crimes. When a suspected vampire died, their bodies were often disinterred to search for signs of vampirism. In some cases, a stake was thrust through the corpse's heart to make sure they stayed dead. Other accounts describe the decapitation and burning of the corpses of suspected vampires well into the 19th century. Vlad the Impaler. It's thought Bram Stoker named Count Dracula after Vlad Dracula, also known as Vlad the Impaler. Vlad Dracula was born in Transylvania, Romania. He ruled Wallachia, Romania, off and on between 1448 and 1477. Vlad the Impaler was a medieval prince whose bloodthirsty acts inspired the world's most famous vampire, Bram Stoker's Dracula. Legends of vampires go back centuries, but few names have cast more terror into the human heart than Dracula. However, the fictional character, created by author Bram Stoker, appears to be based on a real historical figure called Vlad the Impaler. Vlad the Impaler, also known as Vlad III, Prince of Wallachia, was a 15th century warlord in what today is Romania, in southeastern Europe. Stoker used elements of Vlad's real story for the title character of his 1897 novel, Dracula. The book has since inspired countless horror movies, television shows, and other blood-curdling tales. However, according to historians and literary scholars, such as Elizabeth Miller, who has studied the link between Stoker's character and Vlad III, the two Draculas don't really have much in common. Who was the real Dracula? Vlad the Impaler is believed to have been born in 1431 in what is now Transylvania, the central region of modern-day Romania. However, the link between Vlad the Impaler and Transylvania is a matter of some debate, according to Florin Curta, a professor of medieval history and archaeology at the University of Florida. Dracula is linked to Transylvania, but the real historic Dracula, Vlad III, never owned anything in Transylvania, Curta told Live Science. Bran Castle, a modern-day tourist attraction in Transylvania that is often referred to as Dracula's Castle, was never the residence of the Wallachian prince, he added. Because the castle is in the mountains in this foggy area and it looks spooky. It's what one would expect of Dracula's castle, Curta said. But Vlad III never lived there. He never even stepped foot there. Vlad III's father, Vlad II, did own a residence in Sighisoara, Transylvania, but it is not certain that Vlad III was born there, according to Curta. It's also possible, he said, that Vlad the Impaler was born in Targovist, which was at that time the royal seat of the Principality of Wallachia, where his father was a voivode, or ruler. There is also Castelul Corvinalor, also known as Castle Corvin, where Vlad may have been imprisoned by Hungarian governor John Hunyadi. It is possible for tourists to visit one castle where Vlad III certainly spent time. At about age 12, Vlad III and his brother were imprisoned in Turkey. In 2014, archaeologists found the likely location of the dungeon, according to Smithsonian Magazine. Tokat Castle is located in northern Turkey. It is an eerie place with secret tunnels and dungeons that is currently under restoration and open to the public. Where did Dracula come from? In 1431, King Sigismund of Hungary, who would later become the Holy Roman Emperor, according to the British Museum, inducted the elder Vlad into a knightly order, the Order of the Dragon. This designation earned Vlad II a new surname, Dracul. The name came from the old Romanian word for dragon, drac. His son, Vlad III, would later be known as the son of Dracul, or in Old Romanian Dracula, hence Dracula, according to historian Constantine Răzăcevici. In modern Romanian, the word drac refers to the devil, Curta said. According to Dracula, Sense and Nonsense by Elizabeth Miller, in 1890, Stoker read a book about Wallachia. Although it did not mention Vlad III, Stoker was struck by the word Dracula. He wrote in his notes, "In Wallachian language means devil." It is therefore likely that Stoker chose to name his character Dracula for the word's devilish associations. The theory that Vlad III and Dracula were the same person was developed and popularized by historians Radu Florescu and Raymond T. McNally in their book In Search of Dracula. Though far from accepted by all historians, the thesis took hold of the public imagination, according to the New York Times. According to Constantine Răzăcevici, the Order of the Dragon was devoted to a singular task, the defeat of the Turkish or Ottoman Empire. Situated between Christian Europe and the Muslim lands of the Ottoman Empire, Vlad II's and later Vlad III's home principality of Wallachia was frequently the scene of bloody battles as Ottoman forces pushed westward into Europe and Christian forces repulsed the invaders. Years of captivity. When Vlad II was called to a diplomatic meeting in 1442 with Ottoman Sultan Murad II, he brought his young sons Vlad III and Radu along. But the meeting was actually a trap. All three were arrested and held hostage. The elder Vlad was released under the condition that he leave his sons behind. James S. Kessler argues that Vlad II sent Vlad Jr. and his brother Raducel Frumos as royal hostages to the Ottoman court. The Sultan held Vlad and his brother as hostages to ensure that their father, Vlad II, behaved himself in the ongoing war between Turkey and Hungary, said Miller, a research historian and professor emeritus at Memorial University of Newfoundland in Canada. Under the Ottomans, Vlad and his younger brother were tutored in science, philosophy, and the arts. According to Radu Florescu and Raymond McNally, Vlad also became a skilled horseman and warrior. They were treated reasonably well by the current standards of the time, Miller said. Still, captivity irked Vlad, whereas his brother sort of acquiesced and went over to the Turkish side. But Vlad held enmity, and I think it was one of his motivating factors for fighting the Turks, to get even with them for having held him captive. Vlad the Prince. While Vlad and Radu were in Ottoman hands, Vlad's father was fighting to keep his place as voivode of Wallachia, a fight he would eventually lose. In 1447, Vlad II was ousted as ruler of Wallachia by local noblemen or boyars, and was killed in the swamps near Baltani, halfway between Targovist and Bucharest in present-day Romania, according to John Akeroyd. Vlad's older half-brother, Mircea, was killed alongside his father. Not long after these harrowing events in 1448, Vlad embarked on a campaign to regain his father's seat from the new ruler, Vladislav II. His first attempt at the throne relied on the military support of the Ottoman governors of the cities along the Danube River in northern Bulgaria, according to Curta. Vlad also took advantage of the fact that Vladislav was absent at the time, having gone to the Balkans to fight the Ottomans for the governor of Hungary at the time, John Hunyadi. Vlad won back his father's seat, but his time as ruler of Wallachia was short-lived. He was deposed after only 2 months when Vladislav II returned and took back the throne of Wallachia with the assistance of Hunyadi, according to Kurta. Little is known about Vlad III's whereabouts between 1448 and 1456, but it is known that he switched sides in the Ottoman-Hungarian conflict, giving up his ties with the Ottoman governors of the Danube cities and obtaining military support from King Ladislaus V of Hungary, who happened to dislike Vlad's rival, Vladislav II of Wallachia, according to Kurta. Meanwhile, Vladislav II sought aid from Ottoman ruler Mehmed II. Vlad III's political and military tact truly came to the forefront amid the fall of Constantinople in 1453. After the fall, the Ottomans were in a position to invade all of Europe. In July 1456, as the Ottomans and Hunyadi's forces were locked in battle, Vlad led a small force of exiled boyars, Hungarians and Romanian mercenaries against his old enemy, Vladislav II, at Targovist, according to McNally and Florescu in Dracula, Prince of Many Faces. He had the satisfaction of killing his mortal enemy and his father's assassin in hand-to-hand combat, they wrote. Vlad, who had already solidified his anti-Ottoman position, was proclaimed voivode of Wallachia in 1456, according to Elizabeth Miller. One of his first orders of business in his new role was to stop paying an annual tribute to the Ottoman Sultan, a measure that had formally ensured peace between Wallachia and the Ottomans. Vlad, the Impaler. To consolidate his power as voivode, Vlad needed to quell the incessant conflicts that had historically taken place between Wallachia's boyars. According to Konstantin Rezacevici, during a banquet given by him at the palace in Targovist, Vlad the Impaler ordered the impaling of some 500 boyars, perhaps only really 50, with the accusation that their shameless disunity was the cause of the frequent changing of the princes in Wallachia. This is just one of many gruesome events that earned Vlad his posthumous nickname, Vlad the Impaler. This story, and others like it, is documented in printed material from around the time of Vlad III's rule, according to Miller. In the 1460s and 1470s, just after the invention of the printing press, a lot of these stories about Vlad were circulating orally, and then they were put together by different individuals in pamphlets and printed, Miller said. Whether or not these stories are wholly true or significantly embellished is debatable, Miller added. After all, many of those printing the pamphlets were hostile to Vlad III. But some of the pamphlets from this time tell almost the exact same gruesome stories about Vlad, leading Miller to believe that the tales are at least partially historically accurate. Some of these legends were also collected and published in a book, The Tale of Dracula, in 1490, by a monk who presented Vlad III as a fierce but just ruler. Vlad is credited with impaling dozens of Saxon merchants in Kronstadt, present-day Brasov, Romania, who were once allied with the boyars in 1456, according to Kristen Wright. Around the same time, a group of Ottoman envoys allegedly had an audience with Vlad, but declined to remove their turbans, citing a religious custom. Commending them on their religious devotion, Vlad ensured that their turbans would forever remain on their heads by reportedly having the head coverings nailed to their skulls, according to McNally and Florescu. After Mehmed II, the one who conquered Constantinople, invaded Wallachia in 1462, he actually was able to go all the way to Wallachia's capital city of Targovist, but found it deserted. And in front of the capital, he found the bodies of the Ottoman prisoners of war that Vlad had taken. All impaled, Kurta said. In one battle on June 17, 1462, known as the Night Attack at Targovist, Vlad III and Mehmed II's forces fought from 3 hours after sunset until about 4 in the morning at the foothills of the Carpathian Mountains, according to McNally and Florescu. The attack was an attempt to assassinate Mehmed II, but using only torches and flares, the Wallachian forces were unable to locate his tent and the alarm was raised. McNally and Florescu estimate 5,000 of Vlad's men were lost to 15,000 Ottomans, but point out that it was an act of extraordinary temerity, which is celebrated in Romanian literature and popular folklore. Vlad's victories over the invading Ottomans were celebrated throughout Wallachia, Transylvania, and the rest of Europe. Even Pope Pius II was impressed. The reason he's a positive character in Romania is because he is reputed to have been a just, though a very harsh, ruler, Kurta said. How did Vlad the Impaler die? Not long after the impalement of Ottoman prisoners of war, in August 1462, Vlad was forced into exile in Hungary, unable to defeat his much more powerful adversary, Mehmed II. Vlad was imprisoned for a number of years during his exile, though during that same time he married and had 2 children. Vlad's younger brother Radu, who had sided with the Ottomans during the ongoing military campaigns, took over governance of Wallachia after his brother's imprisonment. But after Radu's death in 1475, local boyars as well as the rulers of several nearby principalities favored Vlad's return to power, according to John M. Shea. In 1476, with the support of the voivode of Moldavia, Stephen III the Great, Vlad made one last effort to reclaim his seat as ruler of Wallachia. He successfully stole back the throne, but his triumph was short-lived. Later that year, while marching to yet another battle with the Ottomans, Vlad and a small vanguard of soldiers were ambushed, and Vlad was killed. There is much controversy over the location of Vlad III's tomb, according to Konstantin Rezacevici in a study published in 2002. It is said he was buried in the monastery church in Snagov, on the northern edge of the modern city of Bucharest, in accordance with the traditions of his time. But recently historians have questioned whether Vlad might actually be buried at the monastery of Comana, between Bucharest and the Danube, which is close to the presumed location of the battle in which Vlad was killed, according to Kurta. One thing is for certain, however, unlike Stoker's Count Dracula, Vlad III most definitely did die. Only the harrowing tales of his years as ruler of Wallachia remain to haunt the modern world. Some historians describe him as a just yet brutally cruel ruler who valiantly fought off the Ottoman Empire. He earned his nickname because his favorite way to kill his enemies was to impale them on a wooden stake. According to legend, Vlad Dracula enjoyed dining amidst his dying victims and dipping his bread in their blood. Whether those gory tales are true is unknown. Many people believe these stories sparked Stoker's imagination to create Count Dracula, who was also from Transylvania, sucked his victim's blood and could be killed by driving a stake through his heart. But according to Dracula expert Elizabeth Miller, Stoker didn't base Count Dracula's life on Vlad Dracula. Nonetheless, the similarities between the two are significant, and Dracula is at the very least loosely based on Vlad the Impaler. Conclusion about whether vampires are real? Well, in our series we have gone from ancient Greece to more modern times with our review on vampires. Our central question is whether vampires are real. If you believe that a vampire is someone who is a monster that lives forever, who drinks blood, is burned by sunlight and can morph into magical creatures, then the data is clear that they are not real and were the product of village hysteria, superstition, prejudice against anyone who appears to be different, and the imagination of fiction. However, if you consider that a vampire is anyone who drinks blood, then the answer is yes. Throughout history there have been many real-life people, and also serial killers, who are worse than the monsters of fiction, and Vlad the Impaler and others would fit into this category. The drinking of blood, clinical vampirism is a blood fetish, and a future episode will explore this psychological behavior. Well, that's everything from our episode today. I hope you enjoyed our series, and our conclusion is that vampires are real in the sense of a deep psychological need, often associated with killers, including serial killers. However, the superstition of magical vampires will no doubt go on in fiction and theater, as human beings just like to be scared and often try to find answers in the absence of facts.